Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to another Alchemy Guide. This time we're going to be going over 5e spellcasting. Now, I say 5e spellcasting because I don't necessarily mean just Dungeons and Dragons 5e. There are plenty of other supplemental games out there that use the 5e system. So if you wanted to create your own spells or use the spells that they have in their systems, you can do so within Alchemy. We even give you the opportunity to create your own spells and use them in either game. So, let's go ahead and jump right into spells. First off, we're going to go ahead and create our own spells. So if we go into a 5e universe by creating our own custom universe, you'll see the spells tab up top. You can either click the button below that says create spell or go to the top right and create spell that way. Either way, you are brought up to the create a spell section, which you can see here. It's suited for a 5e game, so it has all the 5e vernacular. So up top here, you'll see that you can add your own name, level, school, casting time, duration, range, and so on. We give you a lot of other options down below, but let's go ahead and create our own spell here. This is going to be custom spell 1. And then we can either make it a cantrip or a leveled spell, however we wish. Let's go ahead and make it a first level spell. You can pick a school of magic, or if, for instance, you are working with another system that has a different school of magic, you can create your own here. It doesn't have to be one of the ones we have. But if you do pick one of the ones we have, you can see that the image up top will actually change to kind of suit the spell that it's underneath. So we'll say that's conjuration. The casting time, we have tons of different casting times. Again, all of these come with a custom block to allow you that ability to kind of really create your own thing here. So we'll say that it costs 1 action to cast. The duration is going to be instantaneous, and our range, we'll say maybe 30 foot. So we can cast that range. If it is a spell that has like an AoE effect, maybe it's a cube, or if it's a line in front of you, you can put that in the range area. All you need to do is click that custom thing and then kind of just type out what the actual range would be. Now, the description can be whatever, it's just there to kind of tell you or tell anybody else who might be reading the spell effect what it actually does. Okay, so nothing special here. This obviously isn't a conjuration spell. It's more of like an evocation. So let's go ahead and change that to evocation to kind of meet with it. But I wanted to kind of show that there's going to be a saving throw involved here. And we'll say that it's a dex saving throw as well as some damage. We'll show you how to create that here. So you can also state what the components are. Is it verbal, somatic, or material? We kind of tell you what all those things are. And what's really neat is if you select material, you can actually get the option to say what kind of materials are necessary to use it. A strand of hair. You could also state whether or not it requires concentration, whether or not it's a ritual if they cast it. Since this is a direct spell, we won't say that it has either of those, but they are options if you choose to have them. Now you could also say, is this an attack where you make a spell attack roll? Or is this a saving throw? And we made it to be a saving throw. Otherwise, they take damage. So we'll go ahead and say it's a saving throw. And when we click saving throw, you'll see here that you're given the option of what you want to make the DC. So here you'll see that the options are your basic ability scores. So for instance, let's make it a dex saving throw because we said it was. And we'll say that because this is a custom spell we are creating, we'll go ahead and put it at, let's say, just a general 12 DC to succeed. Pretty easy, almost 50-50. And then we did have damage, so we're going to add damage to this one. So we said 2d8 radiant damage. So we're going to go down here to where it says add damage. And then if it has damage, we can place it here. That's the die. The number of die, that is the how many sides it has. If there are any bonuses or anything like that, we can add to the damage. But then we are going to say that it was radiant damage. So we scroll down and find radiant. Again, the nice thing here is that you can go down and say like custom, if there's damage or anything like that. And we also included healing. So if you are rolling or making a healing spell, you can also include healing as a type. So it would be under damage. So for instance, if it's a 2d8 heal versus a 2d8 damaging spell, you go to your damage here, add damage, and then type is going to be healing. Um, let's say, for instance, this spell can be cast at higher levels. So it's a first level spell, but let's say, for instance, this can be upcast. So second, third, fourth, whatever. When you click this, you can describe how it is, how when it levels up, how it is affected. So, for instance, it's 2d8 at level 1, and we'll just say that for every level after this one, after first level, it's going to go up by 1d8. So, okay, every level after first, you may add 1d8 to the damage. Now, we have two different options here because there are things like cantrips that level up with your character, and that would be damage at character level. And you can describe how every time you level up or when you reach a certain level, how the damage actually is applied to it. So we're going to go damage per spell slot because we want to say for every spell slot after first, it'll go up by 1d8. So we're going to say damage per spell slot, and then we're going to add a damage scaling option here. And we're going to say that at every level after first, it's going to go up by 1d8, and it's going to be radiant damage. So that's going to be the type again, go down to radiant, and then the minimum level. So for instance, let's say, for instance, this ability, this spell isn't able to actually go up until level 3. Maybe it's a first level spell, but you can't upspell it or upcast it until it's level 3. You can change the minimum level here to do so. And you can change this to be whatever you want, and you can continue adding damage. So for instance, if it's like 2d8 radiant and then 1d8 necrotic, you can add additional damage to it by adding damage or removing it, whatever you need to do. Once that's all done, you can create tags for your spell. So for instance, maybe only wizards can use it. So I'm going to type in wizard. Maybe it is we said it was a evocation spell. So I'm going to type evocation. Giving it these tags make it searchable. So for instance, when we go to look this spell up in the future in the spell books or wherever we might find them, if you type in evocation or if you type in wizard or something like that, this spell will pop up. So now that we have this spell created, essentially, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And we have created a custom 5e spell in our custom 5e universe. Now, what does that mean? That means basically whenever you start playing in a game and the GM has activated this universe within the game, you will have access to these custom spells, as well as the custom articles, NPCs, premates, so on and so forth within this universe. But we're looking specifically for spells this time. So let's go ahead and jump into a game, and that way we can see how to use spells and how to bring in this custom spell and use that one as well. All right, so we're in a game now, and this is a general 5e game. Now, this is meaning that all things that are in the SRD have already been brought in, such as regular spells and or creatures and things like that, but we are concerned about how to use our spells and how to bring in our custom spell that we created and use that one as well. So as you can see here on the bottom left, we have our spells. Now these have been already brought in through a character that is already pre-made, but let's talk about what they look like here. Now you can see the header here shows cantrip first and so on from there. And then this even shows your spell slots and things like that. But let's go over a few things. The first is that a symbol will show kind of what type of school of magic this might be, as well as the corresponding color. Then you'll see the label of what the spell actually is. And on the right, you'll see a little dot. That dot lets you know whether or not this spell is prepared, which is great for casters that either have a bunch of spells in their book and then they go about each day and prepare their spells. But by clicking and unclicking that, you can see that it unselects it and says, hey, this one isn't prepared for the day. And you can go about preparing your spells like such without having to go and add and remove spells each time. If you go ahead and right click a spell, you can also view it. And by viewing it, it's going to bring up a central modal that will tell you everything you need to know about that spell. It tells you all the information before you cast it. So it gives you an idea of what that spell can do. And you understand, hey, you know what? I do want to use that move. And then we go about casting it. On this bottom left panel, you'll also see that spell slots are located here. So if, for instance, you use a spell Spell slots are not automatically used up for you. It doesn't show that it's been used. Reason being is there are some classes or some species or races that use a spell but don't use a spell slot, so we don't automatically apply those to you. What you can do though is if you cast a spell or use a spell, all you need to do is click the little pip next to spell slots, and it'll go ahead and fill in for you, letting you know, hey, you use that spell for the day, and then you can kind of unclick them to relieve them of those pips. The other thing I'll make note of really quick is that if you mark something other than an action, it will go ahead and state what it is. So this one here is a reaction, letting you know that, hey, I do have a spell that I can cast as a reaction, and just kind of allowing you to say, you know what, do I have any reactions? Oh, yes, I do. Shield is a reaction, that kind of thing. It gives you a little bit better notification without having to go into the spell and look to see if it's a reaction. Now, how do I get these spells on my character here? Or how do I add more? Let's say, for instance, I'm leveling up and I need to go add more spells to my book. Well, all you need to do is go into your character sheet here. It'll open up the character sheet, and you'll see here on the middle, this is the view side of the character sheet. You'll see at the bottom your spells and your spellcasting ability that you set, and we can change that at any time. You have your spells that we have, and this is just a quick and easy view of what we have selected. And then if you go up to the top left, you'll see that when we go to edit the sheet and we go over to spells, this gives us a little bit more functionality. So if we go over here, you can see that we can change our spell casting ability modifier. So for instance, if I have a wizard, I have intelligence, or if I have a druid, I have wisdom, that sort of thing, and it'll pull from that ability. You can filter spells for the spells that you are specifically looking for, or maybe a certain type of spell. Maybe it's an evocation spell that you're looking for, so on and so forth. The one thing that you can see here is that we have a nice little pop-up that gives you an idea of what the spell is before you click it, so you don't have to get to know the spell or click into it and use it before you know what you're doing. And then here you'll see that if you click on one, it will activate it. And it's also going to, as soon as you save and say, okay, we're good, it'll throw it here into your book. You'll notice this little thing here on the right-hand side, though. Some things allow you to use a different ability, even though your main ability modifier would be, for instance, here, int. But if you wanted to, you could change this by clicking into it and change it to whatever you want. So for instance, it's int now, but maybe it's strength later, or maybe it's dex or something like that. And you can use a different ability with that one specific spell if you'd like. Now, if you wanted to, you can go ahead and fill out your character spell book just like this. And then you can also, just for quick reference, type in the word known here. And by typing in known, it will go ahead and show you exactly the spells that you have selected on this character. But we are looking for our custom spell that we made, right? And there's a huge list of spells, so finding that one might be a little bit more difficult. So we're going to go ahead, and if you click this little caret next to it, you'll see that there are different titles here. Now you have known, which is the one we talked about. You can search by the different class that you might be. You can search by basic rules. These are the ones that are in the SRD. I've even activated Humblewood, so you have Humblewood spells here. But one we're looking for here is the Untitled Module, because that's the one that we created our spells under, that custom spell under. So I'm going to click that, and by clicking that, it should just give me my spell that I made. There we go, Custom Spell 1. And you can see that by scrolling over it, it has the information that we created for that custom spell. And I'm going to go ahead and click it on and click OK. And that should add that spell to our spell book on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. So now when I go to the bottom left and I scroll down, I see my custom spell 1 here. And by right-clicking, and I can right-click it and view it, it will bring up that central modal again. And you can see that we have stuff like, hey, it's wizard, hey, it's evocation. And you see all the stuff that we added to it to make sure that it is good to go. One of the things I want to show you, though, is that it is upcastable. So there are things that are upcastable, and how do we handle that? Well, what we do is if you have available spell slots, or excuse me, spells in that area, what you'll see is that that spell is now repeated in the second spell slot area or spell area. So you have the second level spell, custom spell 1, and it gives you that +1. That means +1 spell above the other. So it's one spell level above the other. You keep going and you'll even get +2. Now, what's really neat is this does the math automatically for you. So if you click custom spell 2, this will give you that 2 extra d8 because it's 1d8 per level automatically to the roll. Now let's talk about rolls in general. So there are a couple, responses to a spell. Well, about 3, because there are spells that just do something, don't require a save, don't require a spell cast, anything like that. Just something like, let's say, for instance, Mage Hand. Mage Hand isn't a thing that has or requires a spell save or requires a spell attack or anything like that. It's just strictly a spell. So instead of having something roll in chat, what we do is we just put a card up there saying, here is Mage Hand. I want to use Mage Hand. And by doing so, if the GM allows it, then okay, cool, you're good. And if anybody wants to know what Mage Hand does, they can click into that card in the journal and they can see that they have access to everything that they need to know about the spell. Now, if I want to cast something that has a spell attack, something like that, we can use Firebolt here. So if you use Firebolt and go to use it, it will throw it up in the journal. Now it's going to do 2 things. It's going to roll the actual attack to hit, and it's going to roll the damage associated with it. So if you look into the card, you can see that we do still have access to the description. So if we still need to know what Firebolt does in general, you can click into that. But you can also click into the bottom card that appears. And by clicking into the bottom card, it will show you the stuff here at the bottom. It'll show you how we achieved the attack here. So the attack was 11, which means that we rolled a 6 plus our 2 proficiency and our intelligence. You'll also notice that I'm a level 5 spellcaster. So our cantrip went up by 1d10. So it was normally a 1d10 roll. But because we're 5th level, it's now 2d10, and it automatically rolled both of those 10s. Happened to roll max damage there, by the way. Hello. And that's how it's basically done with the spell attack. And either it hits or it doesn't. The GM will say, hey, yes, it hits. No, it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then 20 damage gets wasted. But if it hits, then you obviously get to do that damage. There are some spells that allow you to say, like, hey, it does half damage. Just make sure that you take whatever the response is or the actual roll is and just divide by 2, and you got your damage there. Now, what if something requires a spell save, or excuse me, a save in general? And how do we apply that in alchemy? So, for instance, we have Firebolt, which is a spell attack. We have Mage Hand, which is more like just like a message, just to say, hey, this is what that spell is. But let's look for one that actually requires them to make a save. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and use our custom spell that we made, because that's one that has a spell save that we created. So we're going to click into that and we're going to click cast. Now, instead of 2 things on the card, it's going to have 3 things on the card. First off, it's going to have our description that will tell us what our spell is if we click into it. Then it's going to have the damage that is associated with it. So we know that it is 2d8 radiant damage here, 2d8 radiant damage. And then it's going to have this little option underneath it. And it says that it requires a dex save with a DC of 12 underneath it. So that means basically if whatever creature I'm targeting needs to make that dexterity save, or maybe it's an AoE and many creatures need to make it. To save you some time, what we've done is you're able to just click the card right here as long as you're playing. So for instance, if a player casts this as a GM, you need to make sure you're playing the NPC that they're targeting. And once you're playing it, it automatically pulls from the stats of that creature. So right here, you can see our creature has, or our character has +2 to dexterity. And basically what that means is that when I click this dex save here in the journal, it will roll my dexterity save automatically for me. I don't have to go searching around for it in my cards here. If I click into it, you'll see that it added my +2 to the save and gave me that 18. So makes it easy for saves. The last thing I need to talk about here is basically just to show you really how upcasting a spell would take effect. So for instance, our spell, we stated that it's 2d8 to start with and then 1d8 per spell level after that. So we're going to cast that same spell, but we're going to cast it at level 3. So we're going to use a 3rd level on that one. So when we cast it now, we're going to expect that the damage goes from 2d8 to 4d8. So when we when we click on the cast spell, as you can see here, it automatically rolls the 4d8 damage that we were expecting. Right there. It's pretty good damage, actually. So 23 on that one. And you'll see here, the radiant damage is 2d8. And we get the 2d8 initial damage, and then the 1d8 for the next level, 1d8 for the next level, so on and so forth. But here you can see that we have cast the spells accordingly. And that's pretty much it when it comes to spell casting. So with that being all, you can see that it is really easy to make 5e spells within Alchemy. Now, that being said, do remember that this doesn't necessarily have to be Dungeons & Dragons. This can be for any game that uses the 5e system. They kind of use that same functionality within their games. So I'm not necessarily responsible for if you create a spell that's way overpowered, but you know what? Good luck to your characters. That's all I got to say. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching another Alchemy Guide. If you have any questions or anything like that, do leave them in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.